You're listening to the Otis Jiry channel.
The Skinwalkers by Patrick REUMAN, performed by Otis Jiry. Giving up on sleep, he rolled over and opened his eyes, annoyed at the rocks underneath the tent stabbing into his back. The humid air beat down on his face as he sat up and unzipped the tent, allowing fresh air to roll in. His eyes began to adjust to the absolute darkness that shrouded over him. "Fuck," he muttered as he rubbed his eyes. He pulled his legs out from inside the sleeping bag and then proceeded to push himself onto his knees. Reaching around the nylon floor with both hands, he took hold of anything within arm's reach to guide his way. He pulled himself across the small tent. The light shining down from the moon barely lit up the sides of the tent enough to see where the door was. Still not fully awake, he reached out in search of the zipper, but it slipped from his grasp and he fell forward. "Crap," he muttered in frustration as he sprang back up, now fully alert. He continued to feel around in the dark, his eyes slowly adjusting to the darkness. "What the hell?" he muttered as he stared at the vacant point in the tent floor where his friend, Tony, had been sleeping. He looked from side to side and then shrugged his shoulders. He had to pee, not worry about what stupid thing his friend was off doing. He unzipped the door, the noise penetrating through the silence of the night. Pulling himself to a standing position outside the small yellow tent, he did his best to peer through the darkness that consumed the forest around him. Only the sound of the insects overcame the silence. Turning around, he reached back into the tent to grab his shoes. He looked down at his socks. Damn it. He pulled on his shoes and staggered in the direction of some bushes about 10 feet away from the tent. The patter of water added itself to the silence as he relieved himself in the bush. Leaning his head back, he let out a sigh of relief. He zipped up his pants and turned back in the direction of the tent. "Jay?" Startled, he quickly turned around. "What the heck, man?" He looked off into the darkness. Tilting his head ever so slightly, he scanned his immediate surroundings. "Where are you, dude?" "I'm out here, man. Come here. I want to show you something." "Dude, fuck you. I'm going to sleep, man. You can play in the woods by yourself," Jay said as he turned back around. "Jay?" "What?" Jay shouted, this time as he turned back around toward the woods. "What are you shouting over there at, man?" a voice from behind him asked. He swung around to see Tony standing there, with a sandwich in hand, a morsel of which was in his mouth. "Who are you talking to?" "You already lose your mind out here?" Tony laughed. "You were—" Jay stopped and turned back around in the direction of the woods. "I was what?" "You were out there," Jay said as he looked off into the woods. "No. I was over there making a sandwich," Tony replied, gesturing just beyond the tent. "How long were you over there for?" asked Jay. "I don't know. I was pulling down the food sack when you left the tent. I figured I must have woken you up." Jay returned his focus back to the woods. "Somebody was out there," Jay continued. "Who?" Jay shifted his focus back to Tony. "Who was out there, Jay?" Tony persisted. "I heard a voice. It said it wanted to show me something." Tony's expression quickly changed. "Come on, man, quit it with the bullshit." "It sounded just like you," Jay said as his face turned cold and expressionless. "Man, enough of this. I'm going back to sleep. It's the middle of the night." Tony turned around in the direction of the tent. Jay quickly followed behind him. They both climbed in and lay back down. "Sorry, man, but I've got some fishing to do in the morning. Can't stay up all night listening to ghost stories." Tony said as he rolled over and pulled a blanket halfway over his face. Before long, the sound of Tony's incessant snoring joined the chorus of chirping crickets as Jay lay there, staring at the roof of the tent. He hated the silence before, but now he was willing to take it over what sounded like Tony choking on his own throat. Minutes and minutes ticked by as Tony's snoring slowly began to blend in with the chatter of the insects. "Dude, wake up!" Tony violently shook Jay. "Wake up!" Jay rustled around and shut up. "What the hell, man?" Jay groaned. "There's something outside, man. I'm not playing." "What's outside?" I don't know. I heard voices, I think. I don't know." The events from earlier began to pour back into Jay's mind, and he suddenly shot to attention. He took hold of Tony's shoulder. "Whose voice was it?" "What do you mean, whose voice was it? I don't know. It was just a voice." The sound of a stick snapping outside the tent caused the two boys to jump. They sat as still as could be, looking at the walls of the tent, waiting for any further kind of movement from outside. "Go and see if anything is out there," Tony demanded. Jay shot back. "Screw you, man. You go out there and check." Both of them just sat there in silence, listening closely. "All right. Let's both go out," Jay said, breaking the silence. Tony nodded, and Jay leaned over to take hold of the zipper. He looked back at Tony and then slowly pulled the zipper down, just enough to get a look outside. "Do you see anything?" "No." Shut up, I'm looking," Jay said, cutting Tony off. Gently, he pressed his hand up against the door of the tent and peeked out, scanning in silence for any kind of movement. "All right, let's go," Jay said as he slid on his shoes. He pushed the door open and stepped out into the night, the rocks crunching under his feet as he stepped away from the tent. Seconds later, Tony was out of the tent and hurrying after him. I think the noise came from that way," Tony said, pointing at the woods in the back of the tent. Both of them jerked around to face a bush that was gently swaying back and forth in the light breeze. Then they jerked to the side, the dirt crunching below their feet. They looked back and forth, twisting at the slightest sound of movement. Tony glanced at Jay. "I could have sworn I just heard something." Tony's head turned back toward the tent. "Maybe I was just hearing things because you freaked me out earlier." "I know what I heard," Jay firmly replied. With his eyes firmly locked on the woods, Jay continued searching for signs of movement. "Come on, Jay. I heard a noise. This way," Tony stated as he gestured for Jay to follow his lead. Jay turned and hurried after Tony, who had already darted off into the woods. "Slow down, man," Jay shouted. "Dude, where are you going?" Turning back around, he saw Tony standing by the tent. Jay turned his head and looked into the woods in the direction he had just been running. "Get over here, man. What the hell?" Tony exclaimed as he started walking toward Jay. Come on, come on, come on." Feeling a chill shoot down his neck, Jay turned his head back in the direction of the woods. Come on. I have something to show you. I have to. Come on." Tony came running up and put his hand on Jay's shoulder, snapping him out of his trance. They were... "Let's go. Let's leave," demanded Tony. "So many voices," Jay whispered, ignoring Tony's instructions. Tony grabbed Jay by the arm and pulled him in the direction of the truck. "It was you," Jay whispered. "No, it wasn't. I don't know what you saw, but it wasn't me." They walked past the tent and the hanging food sack. "Wait, what about the truck?" Jay cut in. "Yeah, it's only a few-mile hike. We can make it there." Jay came to a halt. "And leave all our things here? No one is going to come all the way out here just to steal our shit. Do you hear yourself? Let's get the hell out of here." "Whatever." Jay stepped toward Tony. "Wait," Tony said as he reached into his pockets. "Damn it. We forgot the keys." Turning around, Tony hurried back in the direction of the tent. Just as they walked past the food sack, A zipping sound filled their ears as something closed the tent door from the inside. The tent shook slightly once and then went all quiet. "What the?" Tony let out. Jay heard a rustle and turned around. "Stop, man!" Jay shouted as Tony bolted into the woods in the direction of the truck. Jay took off after him at full speed, dodging trees and jumping over logs. "Stop!" he commanded. Jay tore through the woods like a lightning bolt. Nearly tripped, but somehow managed to maintain his balance as he watched Tony slowly disappear from his line of sight. Coming to an abrupt halt, Jay spotted Tony just standing there, facing in the opposite direction. Jay bent forward, placed his hands on his knees, and gasped for air. "What the hell, man? Slow down," he said as he breathed heavily. Tony continued to just stand there, staring off into the distance. "Tony!" Finally, Tony turned around, his eyes staring blankly into Jay's. "Come on, here's what I've been waiting to show you," Tony said, gesturing behind some brush. "Right over here." "No!" Jay shouted. "Come on, come on." "Jay, where are you? Let's go!" He heard Tony shouting in the distance. "It is right here. Right here." The Tony in front of him continued pointing at the ground. Jay turned to run but tripped, falling to the ground. He smacked his head off the ground and fell into a daze before opening his eyes. The sunlight pouring into his irises, he threw up his hand to shield himself from the light flooding in through the window. The woolly blanket dropped to the side as he pushed it away from himself. After his eyes finally began to adjust to the light, he looked around the room. He glanced over at his clock. 10:46 a.m. "Are you coming down for breakfast or what?" A woman's voice impatiently asked from somewhere outside his room. He looked around his room and then shouted back, "Yes, 1 minute." Getting to his feet, he pulled open his drawers in search of a fresh set of clothes. After throwing them on, he opened his door and peered out into the hallway. The sun cascaded through the hallway windows, illuminating the walls and the floor as he walked down the stairs. Rounding the corner, he entered the kitchen to the sight of his mother, sliding some freshly cooked eggs onto a plate. "Here's your breakfast, honey," she said as she slid the plate toward him. "Where's Dad?" "He'll be home soon. He ran to the store to get some bacon." "Can't have his eggs without bacon," she laughed. He looked down at the eggs, the smell rolling up into his nose, bringing an instant smile to his face. "This looks really good, Mom." "Well, thank you," she smiled. Jay looked up at his mother. "Dad's not coming home." "What do you mean? Don't say that." "That's your father you're talking about. You can go sit in your room if you're going to be rude." "And that's not my room." "Jay!" his mother exclaimed. "That hasn't been my room since the house burned down 3 years ago. And Dad died running back in to try and save me, even though I wasn't even there. I snuck out earlier to hang out with friends." "Now that's enough," his mom cut in as she stood up from the chair. "I will not be having that kind of talk in my house. This isn't our house." Darting toward the sink, he furiously started pulling open drawers. "Sit down." He pulled open a third drawer and reached in, grasping the handle of a large kitchen knife. Jay turned to face his mom. "Well, I guess if this is real, then this is going to cause a world of pain." Jay bolted at his mother. "Wake up!" He swung the knife at her, stabbing Tony in the chest. He gagged. Jay sat up and pushed Tony off of him. Tony gagged. "No! What the hell?" Jay shouted as he stared in disbelief at his friend, who lay on the ground with a jagged stick protruding from his chest. Taking hold of the stick, Jay pulled on it in a desperate attempt to remove it from his friend's chest. Tony cried out in pain before closing his eyes. The tears began to well up in Jay's eyes as he crawled backward and sat down. No, this isn't happening. This isn't real." "You found it. It's here," a voice said from behind him. Quickly, he stood up and turned around to see Tony standing in front of him. Tony's mouth moved, but Jay couldn't hear a single word that passed his lips. Suddenly, Jay's dad emerged from the darkness of the woods, and the two of them closed in around Jay. Tony halted just inches from Jay. "We're here, Jay. Come join us." "No!" Jay pushed himself back. "This isn't real. This can't be real." A tear trickled down his face. "Tony!" He looked down at the motionless body of his friend. "Tony, get up, please." "You can join us forever and be happy," Jay's father smiled. "Happy, Jay, happy." Tony knelt down. "Just come and be with us." "No, you aren't real." He crawled backward until he reached the ledge, his hand almost slipping. He managed to regain his composure and peeked over the edge of the cliff. With his surroundings shrouded in darkness, there was no possible way that he could gauge how deep it was. "Come, come," the thing standing before him continued. "No!" Jay screamed again. He saw no other option. Jay pulled at the edge, toppling himself down the hill. He rolled and bounced, smacking off branches and rocks. He finally landed at the bottom. He groaned in pain, feeling it pulsating through his body. His neck hurt. Pain radiated down his spine. He tossed his arm over his face and tried to push himself up. He had to get himself up and run. Slowly, he opened his eyes and let the sun in. With his whole body in pain, he looked around. "Hon, come downstairs before your dad eats your breakfast."